Fine. This was made around the time of April Fool's Day, and therefore it's not too serious. Uh, this time of year is full of religious holidays that are serious to Muslims, Christians, Jews, and so on. But so poor little April Fool's Day gets forgotten sometimes, and I just thought I'd step up, help a friend in need. All right, then. So this is, I have to introduce this by saying that I had a friend when I started collecting, uh, whom I chose to be sort of my mentor. I'll call him Arthur. That wasn't his name. And he gave me some really good advice about things. Like all beginning collectors, I was buying stuff helter skelter. Oh, this is pretty. I'll buy one of them, and so on. And then you realize you're going nowhere with this stuff. You're having fun, it's true, but you're going nowhere. So I got this guy Arthur to help me. I should have gotten Harv Stevenson. Does anyone remember Harv? He was president of the club for a while. He was a very astute collector and a very generous guy with his time and his expertise. But in any case, I didn't. I got Arthur, I'm going to call him. And he gave me some good information, and he gave me some really lousy information. So these are things you should not do, and information you should not take from people like Arthur. I almost don't know why this is on here. This is sesquicentennial, and Arthur reminded me that virtually no one except those who collect American stamps even knows what this word means. And sesquicentennial, okay. You could say 150 years, that might get you by. But it isn't the kind of word you want to use down the corner at Clancy's bar. You'll be thrown out in your ear, Just don't use it, even if you know what it means. So some of the topics that Arthur talked about, one was disturbed gum, which considerably devalues a mint stamp. And he went on about disturbed gum, and I was getting a little confused and so on. And so have you got an example? And I don't know why he did this, but he said, yeah, this is an example of disturbed gum. You talking to me? You talking to me? Ain't no one else here. What the hell? That is lousy philatelic advice. Roulette separation, we know about perforations, imperf, die cuts, and so on. There's also a thing called roulette separation. Arthur told me that's when you have a friend who's got a really bad gambling problem, and you say, you got to get away from that wheel, man. Circular date cancellation, an example of this that he offered, which really lousy example, is something like this. Oh, sorry, hon, I can't make it tonight. I'm being sent off to Chicago. Oh, darn, and I made pot roast just for you. That's a circular date cancellation. He told me. I don't use that definition anymore. Embossing. This is what he told me what embossing was like. He had a thing about the French. Okay, boys, get to it now. This is not your home. Move it. Time is money. Get on an envelope and ship out. That's ridiculous. And how many times could you use that anyway? Arthur had a thing about the French. He didn't dislike them, far from it. But he'd get carried away in certain attitudes. So when we came around to the term tête bêche, which of course there's an example of it on screen, he said, "Oh no, don't pay attention to that. Don't pay attention. Old tête bêches, those pesky old French showing off. They're so proud of their second flakes, huh? We have a second flakes. You don't." We have a member of the club who loves EFOs. Not everyone is familiar with what that is. It is not what is depicted here. That is a UFO. He told me that EFOs were easily identified flying objects. And he said if we had more of those things, we'd probably have more collectors. I don't know if that's true. Cleaned plates are necessary to make a good impression when you're printing a stamp. But he got confused and he told me that clean plates were for making a good impression in other circumstances. That was
I
quite
had a
good, wasn't
feeling
it,
that was
Wally?
coming.
It certainly was, Stanley. Say, you wouldn't have a little bit more, would you? No. Et voila, as the French say.
Well, the question about disturbed gum,
Yeah,
I suppose that can refer to many different things.
Yeah.
Practically anything wrong with the gum other than a hinge mark.
Yeah.
Right? Like a fingerprint, pencil writing,
yes,
stains, tropical stains.
right. When I
I
first
can't.
started when I first started collecting, I was buying here and there, small amounts of money. It was entertainment. I'm not an investor in philately. And I got one guy who was down in North Carolina, and he advertised mint stamps, and they were very good prices. When I got the pack, I turned them over, and on the back they had hinge marks, and he took some kind of glue and swiped it over it, thinking he had removed the hinge mark, and he had just made it uglier than ever.
Hmm.
It's just, yeah. But you're right; it could be so many different ways of disturbing the gum, and it really does make a big difference. And of course, some gums from the old days disturbed themselves as time went on. They cracked, they browned, they
Mm-hmm.
foxed, as they say. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a mint collector, but I do have some old stamps where clearly another collector had written on the back in pencil the Scott numbers for them. How
mm,
is that considered? Like, is that like a really horrible thing to have done to a stamp, or how does it affect it?
A
Well,
lot of dealers used to do that too.
in the
And
realm of stamp dealing, um, that is equivalent to a hinge mark. In other words, you can't call it never hinged if it's got writing, unless it's an expertiser mark. Most expertisers don't write on the back of mint stamps, but I suppose that if you have a genuine expertiser mark, then it might still pass as never hinged.
I've had that feeling. As soon as you mentioned pencil writing on the back of a stamp, I'm not interested in.
there are times when I have been grateful that someone penciled in lightly, hopefully, the Scott number or the Miko number. And that's when it they've done, if you trust the source, you trust the person who identifies the stamp, and you don't have to go through the perforation, the watermark tests and so on, the paper tests, and when things are very difficult to distinguish one from another. So you get a Scott number of 431A, B, C, D, all depending on the watermark. And in that case, if it's not a very valuable stamp, it doesn't bother me in the least. They're saving me some time. Um, Many watermark. That is if you trust the person who has done it, or
I've found that many, many times people have the numbers wrong.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yes,
undoubtedly.
that's right.